So Anders, thank you so much for joining me on the InnSync Show. Could you tell us a little bit about yourself and a little bit about what you're up to?
Yeah, I'm Anders Johansson. I'm a Swedish citizen. I'm based in Stockholm, Sweden. I've been working for 35 plus years in the hospitality industry in a number of different positions. And I got some interest in revenue management very early in the late 1980s. So I was probably one of the first ones starting to implement that in one of my hotels back then. And then I continued to work with technology for hotels, and I've been in management positions. I've been the CEO for a small hotel group and so on. And nowadays I'm working with my startup demand calendar to try to provide a fuller solution for the commercial teams in hotels.
Fantastic, thank you. Well, actually, then that's a great segue into the first question I was going to ask you. What needs to change in commercial work in hotels and why?
Yeah, so during conferences for the past 5 to 10 years, we've always talked about the silos in commercial activities. So marketing works in their own silo, sales in their own silo, and revenue management in their own silo. And there are a lot of conflicts between these roles, and I think it's time to get to a more teamwork situation where you work together as a team. And especially now during COVID, a lot of knowledgeable people left the industry. So in order to get back to normal life for hotels, maybe they need to collaborate a little bit more and not argue about who is right and who is wrong. Maybe it's a time to work together and look for the best interest of the total instead.
I couldn't agree with you anymore on that. And now that we have data to work with, right? Marketing, sales, they should be working together in harmony, right? I mean, each working to support each other, obviously it is going to lift the entire operation together. Is it always been that way? Do you see a trend? Do you see a shift? What have anything from that perspective?
It's been pretty difficult to break down the silos, and I think I say a little bit with a little bit of a joke that the hotel industry was really spoiled before the pandemic, because they could just open their doors and the hotel rooms would fill up more or less automatically.
Sure.
It's a bit of an exaggeration, but it was much easier. And the travel industry had a growth record for at least 10 years since the financial crisis, and the growth rate was between 4% and 7% per year. That's outstanding. So there was no lack of guests, basically. So there was no real need to cooperate or to work as a team. So that has changed. But the biggest challenge is probably to collect all the data to one place and let everyone work with the same data set. And now the data is stored in several different systems all over the hotel, basically. And the different roles tend to work with their own data, and they sometimes don't say or tell the same story. So that's a challenge, to get everything collected in the same place. And we know also that a lot of systems used in hotels, they are ancient. They are 10 years old or something like that, and it's not very easy to connect them and retrieve the data from these systems. So there are new systems coming along. So but the hotels also need to invest in these systems, and then that challenge will slowly fade away, probably.
Right. Sure. So how can a hotel, their B2B sales department be more productive, by the way?
Yeah, I think it's about defining the job a little bit better. It's traditionally, when I started in the industry, it's like you hired a salesperson and you were super happy because they came with their contacts from their previous job in another hotel, and they started to call their contacts and said that, oh, hey, I've changed jobs now. I'm working for this other hotel now. Could you please come and stay with me now instead of my old employer? Sure. And it was a little bit like that everyone was trying to steal the business from each other when they hired new salespeople. And I think it's we should become a little bit more sophisticated than that and define the job much more clearly, define the desired outcome from the job much more clearly, and also come up with a much more productive work process. What should a salesperson be doing every day? Call on customers, put together proposals, and so on. And if you look at that sales process, you can probably start to improve the process. And it's to increase productivity. It's not to beat your employees harder. It's about working with the process and improve the process, and then everything will work much smoother. So I think there is a huge possibility in structure and better definitions, and also, of course, better system support and tools and all these kind of things.
Okay, great. Yeah. Do you see prospecting? You mentioned a shift, kind of a shift in the hospitality industry in general has been, they've really benefited from 10 plus years of great times. And we've gone through 26 months of this pandemic. Do you see a shift in how salespeople are going to need to adapt to this? Do you see more of a proactive approach to sales, so to speak?
Yeah, I think you have to be much more proactive and you have to be in hunting mode, at least for the next couple of years, because it will take some time for business and meetings to recover. You get a lot of information now from media that maybe it's going to recover by the end of this year and so on. If that's what you hear if you listen to the industry, like airline CEOs and hotel mega chain CEOs, that's what they say. But if you listen to travel managers from big corporations, they say that we will never ever travel as much as we did pre-pandemic and never ever meet as much as we did pre-pandemic. These guys are the customers, so I trust them a little bit more than the industry. But so I think that there will still be a lot of business out there for hotels, but then you have to be a little bit more proactive and maybe a little bit more aggressive as a salesperson in a hotel. So it's a tougher job now than it was pre-pandemic, definitely.
Definitely. Yeah. So actually that leads us into kind of, I think you touched on a little bit of question 3 that I was going to ask you is, what is that path forward, by the way, for hotel B2B sales?
Yeah, it takes a little bit longer answer, I guess, because there there is no demand for hotel rooms per se. It's a byproduct of a travel reason. So if there is no reason to travel, and for business travel, for example, the reason for travel has changed, because before we had these type of meetings, virtual meetings, you had to travel because there was no way to get to know the customer or to speak to the customer. Right. But now there is other options. So now the reason for traveling as much is a little bit less. So then you probably have to refigure a little bit what is the main reason for traveling in business, what type of occasions, what situations do you need to be traveling, and then you have to find the right type of offerings for these type of business travelers. Maybe working remotely for a longer period of time, or maybe once you travel, maybe you stay longer, maybe you need another type of service for that. So hotels need to adapt to that new behavior also in business travel. And I think that hotels that can talk about that with travel managers or corporations, they will have a better chance of closing the business also. And the same goes for meetings, where you have to understand a little bit better what type of meetings will be there in the future, and is that hybrid or physical or only virtual meetings and so on, and where could hotels fill a role in those type of meetings, and what type of services do they need to produce. So it's not only about sales, it's also about product development and finding new products and then present those to the potential customers as well.
Very nice. Yeah, great. And actually, speaking of technology, obviously staff shortages, we've got the great, resignation, but a lot of people, like you had mentioned earlier, a lot of people moving out of our industry entirely into different industries. So how can tech help fill the holes that are being left right now?
Yeah, so well, first of all, tech could be more or better adapted to the way hotels work. So that's so for example, sales CRMs, they are very standardized. Maybe a hotel sales CRM would work better or more adapted to hotels. Same thing goes for a lot of other systems. And if you look at other industries, for example, banks or airlines or so, they have been very skilled in letting the customer do a lot more work.
Right.
And that's a pretty good way of doing things in order to increase your own productivity, but at the same time, the customer is actually happier because they feel that they are in control and they don't have to wait, they don't have to find someone that can help them and so on, because they can do much more themselves.
Right.
And maybe that same principle could be applied on B2B sales as well, where maybe the customer could, what we have been talking about for a long time is that customers should be able to book a meeting online.
Absolutely.
And that is taking place now in the mega chains, but for smaller hotels, it's still a long way to go. And 10 years ago, a lot of hoteliers said that's never ever going to happen because that's too complicated. But now it's happening. So that's one way of letting the customer do the job instead. And maybe the customer could actually produce the offering or could do something more as a self-service type of thing. I don't know exactly what that could be, but you should look at the banks and airlines and see what is possible.
Well, and even if you look at large purchase products like Carvana, and I think the pandemic has made it purchasing large ticket items or seemingly complicated processes, they've become much more comfortable now, right? And so, hate to say there's any silver lining to the pandemic, I think it's really upped the game on people's ability to use the internet. And like you said, I read that one of your blog posts, is that the perception of giving people the control of letting them do the research and control the buying process on their time, they'll do most of the work for you, which is absolutely, you're spot on about that. So I think you're completely right. And personally, I think the buyer's journey in the way that people research and purchase products really has changed a lot dramatically in just the last 26 months because we were forced to, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah.
That's I think you're spot on about that. Absolutely.
But I also think that we should not take away service, but
absolutely.
We should still have a high service level. But if you remove all these routine tasks from your employees, they can focus more on the person-to-person service, and then the guests will be even more happy. So
there you go. Absolutely, spot on. Absolutely. So any small parting takeaway, gift, or one of Anders' insider's secret sauce, so to speak?
Yeah, maybe it's. I've been in the industry for such a long time, and I have been in crisis many times. From the early 90s here in Sweden, that was terrible. 1/3 of the hotels went bankrupt because of a real estate crisis, so that was terrible. And then we had the dot-com crisis, and then financial crisis, and so on. And when we look back, we see that they all ended, and the new upturn started at one point. You don't know exactly when, but my takeaway from this life experience is that there is always an upturn, and what you can do is to, instead of being depressed about the crisis, you can say that let's prepare for the upturn, and then you get ready when everything is going upwards again, and then you are really prepared. And I think that's something that hoteliers should actually practice much more than they do. Unfortunately, I've seen too many hoteliers that say that, okay, let's wait, and that's not from my experience, that's not the best way to do it. It's better to have a readiness and a preparedness for what's coming, instead of being too depressed what's going on right now, because there will be new crisis, and you can be depressed forever if you don't have that more optimistic view. That's much better, and it's more fun as well.
Yes, absolutely. I love the glass half full versus half empty mentality. I've always been that kind of person as well. So I love that advice, because it's easy. You don't have to look too far if you want to feel doom and gloom, right? It's pretty easy to do that. So and you're right. Ultimately, things turn around, and we're heading in the right direction. Those that are prepared, make plans for that recovery. I think you're going to be able to make leapfrogs where people are still apprehensive. So I could not agree with you more on that. That's some great advice. Thank you. Well, hey, I really enjoyed our conversation. Anders, it's been fantastic. It's great being. I really enjoyed getting to know you. We're looking forward to a follow-up convo. We've got obviously we just scratch the surface here, so I'd love to have you back on sometime soon. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for having me.